Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. So you know it works in giving you a boner. You can take them anytime, day or night, on a full stomach or empty. I mean, I would recommend maybe, not going into the office taking one, but, whatever. And since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill. If you could benefit from extra function and more confidence, Blue Chew is the fast and easy way to enhance your performance. Most guys, like Juge, talk a good game, but Blue Chew helps your follow through. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package. So no in-person doctor's visits, no waiting at the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. Aside from me reading this, it's made in the US of A, America. And since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, it's cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. You can visit bluechew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code ARMCHAIR. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's Blue Chew, BLUE, chew.com, promo code ARMCHAIR, ARMCHAIR, to try it for free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice. And we'd like to thank them for sponsoring this train wreck of a podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Saints Happy Hour podcast. This one is free because of Blue Chew. You just heard Kevin tell you about it. It's amazing. Andrew, we had 1,000 people download the Sheldon Rankins Breaking News podcast, and we do not have 1,000 patrons. So people, you need to sign up so you can get this podcast for free. Sign up for $10. You get all the podcasts every day, and you get Andrew's grades, which we are discussing today. Andrew, I
just want to point out also that when that news hit, I was outside of the grocery store, and I dropped everything. I dropped the shopping to take that phone call. So that's my commitment to this podcast. That's my commitment to you. That's my commitment to the patrons. We're making this happen. All right, we're dropping everything in life.
Yeah, we dropped it. We go outside. we make it happen. And look,
make it happen, baby.
I'll be honest. Andrew, one of the reasons he's here is his jokes are amazing, but he knows what the PUP is, the injured reserve, when you can come on, when you can come off. And now that Nick Underhill is fucking covering the Patriots, man, you need people like Andrew that can explain the PUP list to us, And that's what you get. So I want to start with Drew Brees. And look, I think he looked amazing Saturday, right? And we laughed on the big show, and we laughed about people saying he's going to decline and blah, blah, blah. But specifically, what did you see Saturday that maybe alleviated your concerns or was different than what you saw from him the last 4 to 5 weeks of 2018 and into the playoffs?
Well, let me preface by saying that I think it's difficult to evaluate a preseason game like this because there's really no consequence other than maybe Breeze's ego or whatever. There's really no consequence to throwing an interception. So what I think you saw is Breeze. I mean, I thought they scripted some nice plays to Kamara that were very safe throws, and especially on that one where he was wide open down the sideline. Breeze made a great throw on the run, on the money, to kind of maximize that play. But I think there were some easy scripted throws. The two throws to Michael Thomas in particular, though, you start to wonder, does he throw that in the third quarter of a playoff game? Those are, when you asked me to compare, maybe he doesn't try those throws because they're risky. And, turnovers, especially at that stage when you're that close to the Super Bowl, they count double or whatever. Whereas like throwing a pick, I just think he has the luxury on the opening drive of a preseason game to maybe take a little bit more risk. But I think what that was useful for was letting Breeze know that when he takes risks, a lot of times the ball is so accurate because of how good he is. And Michael Thomas in tight coverage is so good that he's going to come up with that football and he's going to make that play. That it was a nice reminder to him and everybody else that, hey, Drew, you can make those throws and it's going to turn into positive plays, even though it's really risky. And I think whereas like you don't see Taysom Hill and Teddy Bridgewater making those throws because they don't trust the receiver, they don't trust their accuracy. And that's not a criticism on them as much as no one's as accurate as Drew Brees. Literally, like he's the most accurate quarterback of all time. But I just think at the end of the day, what you saw from Brees was a guy that looks healthy, pushing the ball down the field, feeling confident in his chemistry with his receivers. The location of the ball was perfect. And that's Brees at his best, because Brees at his best operates in small windows. Their NFL has very small windows where you can fit the ball. And, I always go back to what Zach Streif said on this podcast. He throws guys open.
Yeah, and the one thing that I found interesting, and then we'll get on to other players, is, you said it in 2013. You said, look, the Saints offense, it goes through Sproles and it goes through Jimmy Graham. And we all know that it sort of does that with Michael Thomas and Kamara. But yeah. I look at them and I think potentially if they continue to struggle at wide receiver and Jared Cook sort of isn't what we hoped for, and people that paid $182 for him in a fantasy draft, if he's not what they expect, then the Michael Thomas and Kamara getting the ball is sort of going to be, it's going to be on steroids, right? Like Drew Brees, they're just going to feed.
That's what I like to call
endlessly.
The Kamara Thomas binge throwing.
Yeah.
Where Brees just starts to binge on those two playmakers.
Which people might they may say it's critical of it, but it can work. Like it'll be a perfectly functioning, very good offense. It may not be unstoppable Death Star, but it'll still be top 10, probably even top 5. So it's not a problem.
Well, I mean that's all the Saints really showed us on that drive.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that because let's be honest, everyone knows Kamara and Thomas are very hard to stop. And they know that they are focal points in this offense. So the beauty of that drive is that the Saints score, Brees looks awesome, and they really showed nothing. They really gave no wrinkles of what their offense could be. Like, it was just like, I mean, it was just business as usual. And so we all see, like, every team that has tapes, like, oh, yep, there they go doing that again. And, oh, by the way, it's really hard to stop even though you know it's coming. But I thought that was really promising because we really haven't seen Brees with Cook at all.
Yep.
We haven't seen, if Deontay Harris makes this team, we haven't seen what like gadget play they could cook up for him because Sean Payton's going to figure out some way to get him on the field at some point. We haven't seen any of the Taysom Hill wrinkles really in this preseason in terms of what he looks like on the field with Brees. So I just think the fact that this offense is firing on all cylinders and we haven't even sprinkled in the wrinkles, we don't even know who the number 3 receiver is on this team. I get excited because I feel like Sean Payton, he's always going to cook some surprises. And to start this year, he is going to try some new things that we haven't seen before, add some wrinkles. And it'll be interesting to see if any of that stuff takes, because if it does, and Jared Cook is maybe exhibit A, but if any of this stuff takes, then the offense just becomes that much more difficult to stop.
Well, and there's a thing that's great about Sean Payton, but it can be frustrating times. But overall, I think it's a very positive thing. Is Sean Payton, as far as coaching offense, he really likes to tinker. Like, he enjoys trying to cook up new stuff, so he never gets stagnant, right? He's always cooking up weird, crazy stuff. And sometimes the crazy stuff, it goes boom and blows up in their face. But I'd rather him be that way and push the envelope than be like Mike McCarthy, where, his offense was really cutting edge for like 2 or 3 years, but he just kept running the same shit. And eventually people were like, even though he had Aaron Rodgers, they're like, it got stagnant.
Well, I mean, the thing I remember most about Peyton is, and this was, I think it was when Peter King was following him, and he kind of detailed what it was like to spend a week with Sean Payton inside the locker room. And he basically said that there was an install they made on Tuesday where Sean Payton, this is like week 8 of the season, Sean Payton hasn't thought or conjured up this play idea for 8 weeks or ever in his career. And all of a sudden, a coach comes up to him and he's like, hey, what if we did this? And I think it was like 3 quarterbacks, having Bridgewater, Taysom Hill, and Brees on the field at the same time. And he's like, can we do that? Is that allowed? And Sean Payton's like, yeah, we can do whatever we want. And by Sunday, they came up with this idea on Tuesday. And by Sunday, they actually ran a play with it. And it didn't work. I mean, it didn't really do anything. But the point there was that Sean Payton, we view him as like this guy that's so calculated and he studies everything, and that's definitely part of his deal. But then there's this whole thing where it's just like sometimes he's not afraid to try something that seems like a good idea on Tuesday and implement it Sunday. So he's open to fresh ideas and stuff like that, which I think is really important in any business, really, and certainly in football. The other thing I thought was really interesting is part of Sean Payton's routine is that he studies the scoring plays every week. Every week, like the first thing he does when Sunday is over is he'll review every single touchdown that was scored during the week. And then during the weekend, and then he'll say, okay, and then I'll look at, okay, how do these teams make big plays? And he has stolen 3 or 4 of those plays over the course of a season because he's like, I really like that play. So that's the kind of coach. Yeah.
It's imitation is the best form of flattery. So the other thing that was interesting in this game, in your grades when I read them and I was proofing them, and we get them up for patrons on Patreon, is JT Gray had an A-, and he's a guy that sort of snuck up on people, not you last year because you were watching the film last year and you were like, he's kicking ass on special teams, but like normal fans like me who are just making jokes and drinking beers, we're like, JT Gray, what? But like he rolls on special teams to a degree where if they want to keep him, who does it push out of their special teams only players?
Well, I think the beauty of making the team as a special teamer is that when you're not ready as a position player, it allows you the luxury to develop, right? Because if you're able to contribute on special teams and you're able to make the team, eventually maybe the light comes on. Whereas like maybe you would have been cut if you were just a position player, but being on special teams, being in practice, learning affords you the luxury. And so what I think we're starting to see with JT Gray, and this was the thing that really caught my eye. I mean, we knew that he was good on special teams. That's why he made the team last year. But I thought he had an exceptional game playing at safety. His play recognition, he looks bigger to me. He looks like he's added some muscle. I mean, he's a fierce tackler. We already knew that. But I just thought he looked very good at safety. And so now you start to wonder, like the Saints can't keep everybody. I mean, when you look at Justin Hardy, Chris Banjo, and Saquon Hampton and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and JT Gray. I mean, Taysom Hill, all these guys that are key core contributors on special teams, they can't keep all of them. And so when you start to think about free safety, if the Saints believe that, hey, JT Gray can be our backup free safety behind Marcus Williams, and if they feel comfortable about him being that guy, then all of a sudden does Chris Banjo become expendable? Because we already know they're keeping Sheldon Rankins on the active roster for those first couple weeks. He may not play. And so they need a roster spot that's going to sacrifice someone. And so when you look at JT Gray and he has a game like this, you start to think, man, is Chris Banjo on the bubble?
Yeah, and look, other teams, it's weird in the NFL in that a player for the Saints and a player for the Raiders, they can be the same exact fucking player, exact ratings, exact everything. But the Saints player, if he gets cut, teams want him more. And it's weird, and I don't know why that is, but teams want players from winning teams. And JT Gray is another guy. Well, you just said he's got the film now of looking pretty good at safety. So a team that needs a safety, they're just more likely to claim Saints players, Andrew, because the Saints are winning. And people may argue and say that's not true, but it is. Like it's like what do they call it? The Patriot. They have the Patriot smell on them, and teams just want them. And it's weird. And I think he's a guy that it'll be interesting what they do. Special teams wise, because they've started to invest in special teams more so than they have in the past. And even though they signed Chris Banjo to an extension, like he's a guy, they didn't give him that much money. He could be out the door.
Well, it's funny how it just seems like certain position groups always seem to benefit, like the Packers quarterback room. Whoever's in that room, I feel like people always want them. And so that's why guys like Brent Huntley, they leave and they still find jobs. But I mean, the Saints, I think, the Aaron Rodgers in there and Brett Favre before. And I think that was part of the appeal with Taysom Hill is hey, they've got a good backup to Aaron Rodgers, a guy they like, so they took the risk of trying to get Taysom Hill on the practice squad. Let's go get that guy because he's been in a system with Mike McCarthy, who's regarded as a pretty good quarterback developer. He's been in the room with Aaron Rodgers, and so another example of that would be like the kickers in Baltimore, where obviously Justin Tucker has the job on lockdown, but like the last two kickers they've had in preseason, Will Lutz and then the other guy this year, they've both been acquired and end up being starters on other teams. So I think sometimes when a position group has success, and sometimes it's not even how good the team is, right? Sometimes really bad teams can have a lot of depth at one position. And so I think it's a faulty line of thinking. I feel like a lot of times Saints fans are like, well, why would the Saints pick up this guy from the Browns? The Browns are awful. If we're picking up players from the Browns, we must be even worse. But it's not like that. I mean, it's sometimes a defensive tackle that can't.
Craig Robertson was a perfectly good, solid backup linebacker, great on special team. He played with the Browns.
Yeah, he did. Exactly. So, and the Browns decided not to retain him because they felt like they had better linebackers. But at the time, the Saints were a better football team, but they weren't better at linebacker. And Robertson represented a significant upgrade over some of the backups they had. So anyway, I think, going back to what we were originally saying, special teams is always the wild card at the bottom end of that 53-man roster, where you just don't know between Banjo, Hardy, Gray, and all those guys really who is jostling for position, and what they can offer at other positions as backups factors into these decisions.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about in the grades, by the way, sign up during the year, because once the year starts, the grades will be under lock and key. You got to pay $10 a month, but $10 a month you get the koozie, the magnet, and the access to every podcast we do.
And the screensaver.
And the screensaver. So tight end, Garrett Griffin got hurt. He's on IR. A.J. Darby, you gave a B, and Dan Arnold, you gave a B. Who is in the lead to get the third tight end spot?
Well, one thing I explained in the grades that I think is interesting about Dan Arnold is that I almost don't view him as a competition to A.J. Darby, for example, because I just feel like he's not really a tight end. He's more of a slot receiver guy, and he can line up at tight end, but he's not really your blocking guy. So I almost think guys like Emmanuel Butler and Keith Kirkwood are battling Dan Arnold for a spot more than the traditional third tight end. And so the question becomes, I think, for Saints, and this is all kind of the Tetris of what does our 53-man roster look like? It's, do we envision our tight end, do we like our run blocking? Or are we kind of worried about our run blocking, so do we envision our third tight end being more Nick Easton and Will Clapp? Do we want to go more jumbo and have them off the edge? In which case, let's keep Dan Arnold and cut a guy like A.J. Darby, because we feel like Arnold will give us a little bit more in the passing game, and we want to leverage that. Whereas if they feel pretty good about their blocking and they're like, nah, you know what? Like, we feel we're going to keep Butler and we're going to keep Kirkwood. We already have big target receivers. Let's cut Arnold and let's keep Darby, who is more of like a versatile tight end that can give us some inline blocking. So there's a Tetris thing there, and I don't have the exact answers. I personally think I would keep A.J. Darby as my third tight end, because I just feel like he offers you more flexibility. He's a guy that can inline block. He can catch a little bit. He can get down the seam. He's not as good as Dan Arnold catching the football and running routes, but at the end of the day, I haven't seen enough consistency from Arnold. I think I would maybe be swayed to keep Arnold over Darby if I felt like he was just too dominant a receiver to let go. But I think the Saints can get close to enough production out of Kirkwood or Emmanuel Butler that kind of do the same things as big frame guys. So my gut says Arnold is on the outside looking in and Darby makes this team. But that's a really close one.
Yeah. So this is why you want to pay for the grades. That kind of analysis from Andrew. He's going to grade every player every week, the entire year. So this has been free because of Blue Chew, and we're trying to entice you people to sign up on Patreon. And we know there's a ton of you people who listen, but you don't pay for the daily podcast. So do it. $7 or $10 a month, you get everything. Do it. It's worth it. It's one freaking meal at Subway. It's a latte. And when the Saints are going YOLO at the trade deadline, you're going to want this podcast, and you're going to be so freaking happy that you spent the $7 or $10 a month. So for Andrew, I'm Ralph. We will see you tomorrow.